Hello and welcome to Unplugged, an IoT podcast where we dive into the fascinating world of industrial Internet of Things and automation. I'm your host, Phil Seboa.
G'day, Phil, and hello, everyone. My name is Ed Fuentes. Well, Phil, we're moving really thickly through some of these interesting podcast guests we're having over the journey. A lot of discussions with engineers, with, as you know, software makers and people involved in industry, working from system integrators to moving out to their own. But they all bring quite a unique skill, and which is really interesting. And that's what we're really chasing, isn't it, Phil? That skill, that talent that we can then expose and show to viewers and industry as well about some benefits of the skills that people learn through their journey. And none more than today's very special guest, Hans Schrynemakers. Hans, you'll go through in more details, but what he does bring today, Phil, is quite interesting in that sense that we talk a lot about IoT and about how important it is to get the structure and the data correct right at that edge level. And I think today we're going to get a lot of knowledge and experience of somebody who's really formatted and understood the benefits of really structuring information and programming in a way that makes life easier, especially for the people in our community. So, very special thanks to Hans Schrynemakers for joining us this morning or this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hans is a seasoned control and automation engineer with over 2 decades of experience in PLC programming. He's helped thousands of engineers transform the way they build applications in Siemens TIA Portal. And from a frustrating night on the factory floor surrounded by, complex spaghetti code to building modular, scalable applications that empower programmers worldwide. Hans' story is an inspiring one of instruction. Let's dive into the journey that you've already completed today. Hans, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Maybe we can dive into that. Part of that intro was this frustrating night. Maybe we can dive into, the night that changed everything and a bit about you and your background.
All right. I'll see if I can recall that evening. So I started my PLC career back in 2002, which is around 23 years ago. That was right after finishing my engineering degree, which I did in Belgium. And I started working first for a company that made pasteurizers for bottling lines. It was quite a niche segment of the market. And there we were using Siemens soft PLCs. We were using Visual Basic.NET for the HMI. And because there was many complex calculations for each bottle going through the pasteurizer, we used as well an external software package to do the calculation. So we didn't do that in the PLC. So it was kind of a mix of different packages working together. So it was quite complex to start with. And then, part of my job description was I had to do commissionings as an automation engineer. So, and for people who have done commissionings, and especially for people who know what it feels like to be on your first commissioning job, it can be a wake up call. It can be a very hard situation to be in your very first commissioning. A lot of companies, they kind of throw you in there into the deep, and you're kind of like, what is it? Swim or go down, right? So that was a little bit what was happening with me. So I was just writing code. I was not really thinking that much about structure by then. Back then, I was doing the same as other people, just trying to make the machines run without any further thought. And then I think after I was working there for a couple years, I got this one project in the US. It was a really big American beer producer. I'm not sure if it was Coors or Budweiser, or another one. It's 20 years ago, and everything was fine. So by the end of the evening, everything was fine. We were up and running. We were running production. So I went home. Went to the hotel. I went to bed. And then around 1 o'clock, I think around that time must have been, I get a call. I leave my phone on because, the customers can call. You need to be available. And it's the customer, and they're saying like, Hans, the machine is down. You have to get over here. And yeah, there's not really any options there. You're paid to do your job. So I, got out of bed, got into my rental car, drove to the factory, and I was just trying to figure out what was wrong with this machine. And after speaking to some operators, I figured out that they've done a recipe change just before. And after the recipe change, they couldn't get the machine up and running. And the code was very messy. It was very frustrating to troubleshoot what was actually happening. But I kind of figured out that the recipe change had kind of initialized some tags, some values in the PLC program, which were not even visible on the HMI. They were not even HMI parameters. Somehow they just creeped into the recipe that was made for that machine. And by changing the recipe, some parameters were set to 0, which caused the machine not to start up, not to run production. And I eventually I figured it out, but it took quite some time, and it really got me thinking. At that time I was very frustrated, and I was just thinking, is this it? Is this my future in automation? Like, because I really didn't like the feeling of being like almost helpless at the customer, sweaty palms, the customer standing behind you, like waiting for production. So yeah, I was close to quitting that night. I was really thinking like, yeah, this maybe not worth it. But then something really, yeah, that's where kind of like where I made the switch. I changed jobs. I switched to a different company, and by seeing some different software in front of me, software that was more structured, more organized, I started to seeing some patterns, and I'm saying, see, this is easier to troubleshoot if you build software in this and this and this way. So that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me, that I stopped thinking of software just as a collection of bits and bytes, but I started to think more of an application built into modules, because that customer's really good of defining the modules. It went all the way from the electrical drawings, where the programming was based on the modules defined in the electrical drawings. And it was a huge step up for me to see that kind of structure and modularity throughout the machines that they made. And that was actually when my journey started as a modular PLC programmer, and that only got better by working afterwards with different machine builders. When I got self-employed at some point, I started to working with different machine builders. So again, new software, some software even better than the one I was working with before. And from the different experiences with different software packages, I kind of took the best bits, so to speak, and I incorporated that into my own programming philosophy, sort of, yeah, my own philosophy. And that's what I'm trying to, that's the value I'm trying to teach other people now, so they don't go through that same struggle, and maybe I can help them before they say like, I'm quitting, that they know that there's a better way to do things.
Yeah, yeah. The life of a system integrator and a contractor is that you never can predict at what times or when they're going to call you, and not just that, you
Yeah.
are the one to solve the problems with people looking over your shoulders. Um,
Mhm.
and in that whole idea or the philosophy you mentioned about structuring programs, and you saw that example, it's a case. Is it a case as well, Hans? Is it sometimes not just one person is on the PLC, but many people are programmed the PLC over time? Does it get messy like that, or how does it get messy?
I think it can get messy if there is not a clear standard of programming within the company. So you would typically see leftover bits from testing, 3 initials followed by an underscore off, test off, which ads I'm guessing you've seen in Rockwell as well, on many occasions. So that's the kind of things. Obviously, that makes it messy, not cleaning up after yourself. I mean, I think if you want to get away from messy logic, if you want to start building structured applications, I think the first thing you have to do is basically to take a step back first, not go in head over heels into programming, but take a step back and look at the application, and try to understand what is this application doing, like what are the different modules of this application, how are the operators going to operate this machine, what is important there for the operators. Because one thing is the mind of a PLC programmer, the other thing is how an operator sees the machine. So that's always what I tell people as well. The first step you should do is try to break down your applications into smaller modules. Don't see it as one big application, but see it as small modular blocks, and start by writing that down either on a piece of paper or you do it on a Word file. But first, figure out the big picture of your application. Define the different blocks, the modular blocks. And then when you have those blocks, then you can go and translate each of those modules into a PLC, part of your PLC application. And even then, you don't straight away start with a programming language, but you start first with the structure in your PLC application. So the structure of your application should kind of be mirrored into the structure of your PLC application, kind of like a digital twin, so to speak. And I think a lot of programmers kind of miss that first step. They go straight away into the programming, and there's all these discussions about programming language, and where I'm convinced from my experience that the first step is actually building the structure of your application, and then the language, that's what goes into those blocks. That's really the final part of the programming. But the biggest, most important part is making the structure first.
It's interesting you say that. One of the things that both Phil and I get involved with, especially around any type of digital transformation, IoT, is building the structure. What does it look like? Well, that's one part of it. The other part, Hans, is how do you define the naming conventions? How do you decide what it gets called or how it's called? Those blocks, those structures.
I mean, I would say that that's typically defined by the company you're working for, the machine builder that you're working for. Of course, there are some naming conventions that are more prone to faults or to difficulties in troubleshooting. Personally, I'm a big um, a believer in the Hungarian notation. I really like the I underscore, IQ underscore. I kind of like it's. I think it's like, for some people it's like a religion. Some people swear by it. Some other people say no. That's like the tag itself. When you hover over it, it says enough. I'm still a huge believer that having a clear, obviously the name has to be clear, but as well signaling, is this an input? Is it an output? Is it an in-out? That you can read that directly from the tag, for me personally, is a huge help when troubleshooting a block. Depending on which platform you're on, you cannot always look at the position of your tag on the block. Is this an in? Outputs are typically on the right, the inputs on the left, but sometimes, like in Siemens, you have in-out, and they're on the left as well. So sometimes it's difficult. Is it just an input or is it an in-out? So I like those. The same as having a small the data type is represented by a small by one letter in front of your tag, is something I'm a big fan of that as well. Like using a small I for an integer, a DI for a double integer. That's something I use a lot, and I think it avoids confusion because you straight away can see what the tag is about. You can straight away see the type. And yes, some people will claim, yes, but you can hover over it. Yeah, I think I'll save the time by not hovering over it and reading it directly from the name. So that's how I think you can make an application more clear with the naming conventions. Yeah.
And over the time, I suppose, in your journey from the PLCs on 2000s and the PLCs today have much more memory for allowing you to write notes along. How important are notes or remarks or comments?
You mean the comment, like the block titles?
Yeah, sure. All that and the comments and the notes in the blocks.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's very important as well. I think the naming of the tags is probably more important than if you have a very good naming structure for your tags, then the comments are not so important. But if you have a tag that's called KLM25, obviously you need some comment to tell what's going on here. But I still personally write comments for every network, every block, try to explain what's happening in the logic. I think your function block should as well be described properly, what's happening in this function. either you're using a version, you use a library versioning, or you make your own versioning, but you write that which version of the block is this, which change is a change log, and things like that are as well very important to know what's happened to it. Yeah. And then, of course, depending on the automation platform, they have specific solutions for that where they have versioning included. Like TIA Portal has project libraries where you can do that. For Rockwell, I can't remember at the moment. As far as I know, there is not a real versioning there. Ed, maybe you can help me out there. I'm not really sure about the Rockwell, but yeah, I would definitely recommend people to use comments to be, again, to be short. No one wants to read very long descriptions, but keep it short and clear, and make sure your naming kind of explains it by itself.
There's several, I guess, ways that we can start leaning on, you know, documentation tools out there to be able to create these very high level but context rich descriptions of our code now, right? We can use AI tools to create quite succinct descriptions and start embedding those into code as well. I guess we've been coding in many different PLC languages, and there's always a bit of a debate about, what's better, what should I be learning, what should I use? What's your thoughts around PLC programming languages? Do you have a preference? Those types of things.
I mean, I think I've read this somewhere, but I actually believe it's true. The best programming language is the one that you have the most experience in, basically. I mean, there is as well some languages that lean more towards a specific type of programming. For example, text-based languages I like to use for assigning values to parameters. If I just have a parameter list and I want to assign values to them, it's very easy to read. Like in a text-based language, ladder logic does not really lean that much to something like that. Loops as well are something that are easily made in structured text or SCL and Siemens. Personally, I'm a big fan of ladder logic. Again, I work with Rockwell and Siemens, and I think it's very visual. I mean, but I'm not saying it's just a language that I'm used to. I still believe you can do great things with ladder logic. I work a lot with motion. I work with synchronized operations, CAM profiles, and it's all done in ladder. So some people, I think, claiming that ladder logic is just for easy stuff. I'm not really behind that statement. I mean, I work with very complex machines, and they're all written in ladder logic. But when it comes to, I think, to the future, there might be a point that with AI being coming into the picture, that it's going to go more and more in the way of text-based languages. Yeah, it seems to be looking that way. There's still the debate of, yeah, how are people going to be able to troubleshoot it who are not very much into those? But then the question is, yeah, does that just require them to have a different type of education, or does it mean that yeah, it's maybe a good idea to leave ladder logic in there?
The whole reason like ladder logic exists, right, is for electrical based knowledge bases. These guys that are electricians on the plant floor that are turning wrenches, making sure the machines are flowing and working correctly, can understand the PLC code. I think probably with the introduction of AI and maybe LLMs at the plant floor level, they're not necessarily going to have to read the code specifically, but they're going to definitely have to know the right questions to ask. And then hopefully, in theory, is that the machine will tell them their pain points right in the future.
I just think it takes a different mindset, a shift, and it will take some different, a bit of a different, yeah, learning curve. You will just have to adapt. I mean, it is going to be the future with AI, if you like it or not. So I think people will just have to see that you'll need to change. You need a different type of education, maybe. And I mean, Personally, I have not seen many electricians go and troubleshoot in the logic. The companies that I work with, they will still call the machine builder and say, you have a person, a programmer that can go online remote and look into our logic. I mean, that's the way that I know from most European companies I work with. I'm not sure if it's different in Australia or in the States, but the companies that I know, there's not many people that in the company that work on the floor that are going into the logic. They call the machine builder and say, we have a problem, please go. I mean, everyone's remote nowadays. They just ask for assistance.
Yeah, OEMs are readily available to dial in.
Yeah, they're ready to dial in. They have a Sekomea or what's there are these companies that sell this remote things to go remote on the lines, and they work very well. I mean, I do complete downloads, installed vision systems software completely remote, so it's a very good tool. Of course, there might always be a flight ticket attached to it if you press the wrong button. But I haven't been in that situation yet in 20 years, so there's always a way to solve it. But there's always that little guy at the side of your head, like, should I do this remote or? But so far it's been working great. Yeah.
So going into your 20 years experience, we like to highlight a bit of an industrial anecdote of your career. I guess, have you been on any particular complex site or faced any challenge? Obviously the one that birthed it all,
Yeah.
but any others that have been a highlight of your working career so far?
Oh, I mean, if we're speaking about highlights, I mean, I like the projects where I personally get freedom, where I'm getting the freedom to where the customer says, and I had that a couple times. They say, you know what, with your knowledge, build this line or do this migration, because then I can use all the tools that I have. Typically, I have to follow a certain standards. If you work for a machine builder, they have their standards. And even though you might not agree with all of them, you think some of it is not as structured as you would like, you have to follow those standards because other programmers come after you and they need to be able to read your logic and understand, okay, this is our standard. But a couple years back, I did a huge migration for a chocolate line, and it was actually it was an old Motion system. I don't know if you know those type of controls, but they're like motion controllers from Siemens. They're kind of fading out. I think they're discontinued. Within the next 5 years, something like that, because the T CPUs, technology CPUs, have been taking over. So that customer wanted to migrate a huge production line from Simotion and a 300 PLC, which is an older generation of Siemens, to a 1500 technology CPU. And that was a really, it was a complex project. I think it had around 30 servo drives in total, vision systems, downstream, upstream communication. There was an OPC UA server connected to it. There was IPCs for recipe handling. So there was a backup IPC where all the recipes were saved, so on a server. So it was a very interesting project, and I think it took about 9 months of preparation, just doing the software, and then it took 4 weeks for the commissioning, which was quite fast, but because everything was well prepared. And I knew the machine before as well. I did the software for the machine before. It was yeah, we went up and we ran production quite fast. So that was that was a nice migration. Yeah. Mhm.
The on in those places, especially level your experience, we typically see. I'm not sure if it's the same in Europe or not, but we typically see here that for some reason end users decide to wait a long time before they modernize their plant floor technology. So you're stuck with this old legacy hardware, and then move to a new hardware, and they never have time, as you explain, unless you're well organized. So what is it? What in that space? I imagine in your case, you've probably done, is it more modernization work, or do you get the chance to build from scratch a lot of programs?
I've built from scratch as well. I get sometimes some requests that a customer is struggling with some software, and maybe the machine builder is not giving the support that they're um, that they want. So, for example, they can be reached, or they just don't have people to help them. And I had a couple requests like that. They say, we have this machine. Can you rewrite the software from scratch after yeah, after our norms, after how we would like it to work, and we would like to add some things. So yeah, I've done a couple of those projects. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
No, that's fine. The reason, I suppose, I'm trying to understand where your most of the experience is from, because I was going to follow up that with another question, especially around factory floor. What's the ideal factory floor look like for you? From a point of view, how does the PLCs, how are the HMIs working together? What's the overall look like? Are they integrated incredibly well? Do they have all types of drivers and servers? Have easy connectivity for you to connect with, or any OEM to connect with? What does the perfect factory floor look like?
I would say, I mean, and this is going to sound, yeah, it's kind of funny, but it should be organized. That's because I'm an organized person. I've seen factory floors where there's wires over the floor, where the cabling is messy. Even seen mice in factories, or cockroaches, ants on the line, things like that. But then you have the other side, as the factory. You can see the factories where they put a lot of emphasis on being clean, doing everything organized, doing a proper, just not leaving stuff unfinished behind. That's the kind of factories that I like the most, where I can see that the customer really puts a big emphasis on we have to keep things organized, we have to keep it structured. And those are typically, as well, in my experience, the kind of customer that will faster upgrade, and not hang on the old technology, because they just know it's important. The spare parts are running out, and yeah.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. And when it comes to current technology, what are some of the technologies that you love in modern PLCs that you didn't get in the older versions? What are some key things that make life easy?
I like the way that everything is more and more integrated nowadays. In the older days, I was working with Semantic Manager in Siemens, which did the PLC part. Then you had the WinCC Flexible, that's the HMI part of Siemens. That was a second software, and you had Semotion, which was a third. So you basically had three software packages which needed to communicate together in some way. And nowadays, and Rockwell was actually way faster with this. They saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and they started to integrate. They bought Motion from a different company. They integrated that into their software package. So that's exactly, that's really what I like, what I like to see in software, that they integrate it, that things are integrated. You don't need to use different software packages. Everything is just seamless. And that's what Siemens has been doing as well, very strongly with TIA Portal in the last decade. Yeah.
And it just means that your skill set has to increase to different disciplines, from motion to process to safety, embedded as well in the PLCs.
Yeah, that depends, of course, a little bit on the company you're working with. I work a lot with companies that are very heavy on motion, that do a lot of servo applications, especially packaging lines. They have a lot of synchronized motion with virtual access and everything. But that's the kind of that's really my passion, like motion. So I do as well, kind of more standard PLC things, like conveyor belts, cooling, heating, PID controls, and things like that. But for me, the most fun I have is when I'm doing motion, when I'm doing synchronized motion, cam profiles, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more challenging, but it's just, I think I just as well like the way the machine moves. It's typically very fast moving parts, very synchronized, so it's very interesting to watch. If you're technical, like like an engineer, like I am, and a lot of programmers are as well. It's yeah.
Does that mean it can go wrong fast as well?
That's the thing. It can, but you, like with everything, you learn it step by step, and but that's, yeah, that's what I'm hired for the most as well, for like complex motion applications. Yeah, that's because that's where I have 20 years experience, both in Rockwell and Siemens. Yeah. I was saying there's, a new aspect to PLCs for the last, I think, 10 years is as well safety into the software. Before there was relays and everything. It was more like the electrician that had to take care of that. Nowadays, it's the PLC programmer together with hopefully a specialized safety person who checks your logic. That's the way it should be. But that's just not for me. It's not the same challenge. It's just it's door switches, e stops. I mean, it's very important for the line, but that's just work that needs to be done. But the fun part for me is really the motion. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so with your other side of the fence and you now being a fully fledged content creator as well in YouTube and on LinkedIn, as well, you've got now thousands of followers on that platform. I guess what inspired you to start sharing your knowledge through guides and videos and online training?
I mean, I was a struggling PLC programmer when I started out, and through my years working myself up in the company, I saw, of course, new programmers starting with having the same issues that I had. So I was kind of teaching them my way of thinking when I was the more senior programmer in that company, and I saw that they actually got a lot of value from it. I saw that they really appreciated it, and yeah, I just started thinking, how can I do this on a bigger scale? And I started to look a little bit what was into the market. I started to look, for example, on Udemy was out there were a lot of people doing Rockwell. Rockwell was very popular, but I could not really see Siemens that much. And I thought, you know what, being from Europe and everything with Siemens, I thought maybe that's what I should try. Maybe I should try see if I can reach more people making a course about TIA Portal, which uh, by that time I was really a big fan of it. In the beginning, I wasn't. I was again a bit hard to change. I was semantic manager, hardcore. That was my roots. And TIA Portal in the beginning was not so good yet. It had these mistakes that starting platforms have. But after a couple years, it got very good, and then I was really became a huge fan. And I thought, how can I reach more people and hopefully help more people not go through the same stressful moments that I did? Because I just remember some of the moments on the floor, on the factory floor. It can be very stressful with the whole fact. And then if you then have the confidence to know how to troubleshoot properly, how to create application that helps, it helps a huge deal. So that's a little bit my motivation. And like with everything, I started small, made some courses, started a YouTube channel. Like they say, grass grows very slow in the beginning. You don't see it, but if you just keep nurturing it, and it starts growing. And that's a little bit. I've been trying to create content on a regular basis, trying to think as well, where can I add value, what could be interesting for people, and on the same time selling these courses or getting people enrolled in my courses, giving them guidance through emails and comments in the courses. And that's been very successful. And like people who then write me an email and they say, you know what, it made a real change. I really think different about software. That makes it all worthwhile. It's really nice to feel that you're actually doing some good for some that your value or your expertise can help someone else. Yeah, I've had mentors like that as well in other fields, and I think it's nice to if that you don't keep things for yourself. I've never actually been about competition either. I never see PLC program as a competition of trying to do better than others. I think more of collaboration instead of competition. I think you get further with that mindset. So I'm not. I don't want to like keep my knowledge for myself and say, you know what, I'm just going to get the jobs if you don't know about it. I just prefer to pay it forward, and hopefully one day I have people um, influencing me in the same way when I need some help with something. That's a bit how I think about those things in life. Yeah.
It's interesting how you say that, in that you are pass that knowledge on to people who want to know about it, and you've structured it in a way that I suppose gives the ability to, one is be able to share the knowledge, but then to be able to share it in a way that others can absorb it. It's a really good skill there, Hans. In that, have you gone back and seen projects where you've seen, oh, someone that's watched my course has done this program? Have you seen the results of your learning in life, in applications?
Um, I have not seen it, but it's funny that you mentioned it. I had a person reach out to me last week, and he said, I saw your HMI images on a factory somewhere. I can't remember where it was. So he said, just to let you know that your reach is maybe further than you think, like that. So there was actually some. I'm not sure if they just copy pasted my image because it's for a specific type. I think, yeah, I made it for like pumps and valves. So obviously it only works if you work in that type of field. But they say, yeah, I could see your HMI graphics somewhere on a production floor. So that was quite humbling, to hear that people are actually using it. And I've had some students of mine send me as well project where they say, look, I'm building this project for this customer. I'm using your graphics. Can you give me some guidance with this and that? So yeah, like that I've seen it. Yeah, but I'm not so big yet that I see it like everywhere around me. But I think it's, yeah, people take it over, they absorb it, and they use it in their own logic, which is really really, really great to see. Yeah.
There's a kind of foundational community around GitHub and all these types of new community open source, you know, community that is building out these applications based on, baseline images, right? They take it forward, they improve it a little bit.
Yeah, it's
As a
great to see. These communities are very strong. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so in your library of courses, what's the most popular?
I mean, I would say it's the bundle. I have a bundle which has a PLC and an HMI course, which takes you from zero to hero, to say it in a cliche way, but it kind of teaches you to build like an application in TIA Portal from the ground up using best practices, and of course in a very structured and organized way. That's kind of my slogan. Let's get structured. So it's all based on being structured in the first place and logic in the second place. So my courses is not about teaching a programming language. There's a lot of courses out there, that teach ladder logic, what's a move, what's an energize, a set, or a latch unlatch, set reset command. But I don't teach that. I teach how to build modular software. So it's an intermediate course. You need to know the basics of PLCs and HMIs, and you need to know very basic ladder logic, and then you can get started with my courses basically. But that's very important, and I would say that yeah, that's very popular, the bundle, because it's great value. You get a two courses for a better price. But most people give feedback about the PLC course, about how the structured way of programming is really an eye opener for them. Yeah, I got lots of feedback from people saying that, okay, they never knew you could do it like that, and they never thought of doing things like that in such a way. And yeah, get very very good feedback from it.
They have that light bulb moment where they,
Yeah, I think so. I
they
think
were
some
they were almost on the factory floor with you, right?
but that's the thing, because I went through the same, so I had as well. I need to as well have my eyes open and see what was possible. If you've never seen software developed like that, you just don't know any better than you just continue doing what you do, right? So, and I went through the same experience, and I can see now that some people having that same shift in thinking. Yeah. Mhm.
But your philosophy can be applied not just to TIA, but you're saying it's a philosophy about structure.
It's exactly. It's not platform dependent. It's an overall PLC structure. Yeah, it's an overall way of. But it's not my invention. I see lots of people, like I said, but I just applied what I saw were some of the best industry leading companies. The software that I saw from very well structured software from machine builders, and I took that. I learned from that, and I took what I thought were the best bits of different software packages that I saw. So nothing of it is like original. All things already exist everywhere, but you just need to have the knowledge. You just need to know that it is there, and that there are steps to the procedure of building a PLC application.
No, that's great. The idea of that passing on the learning of what you've done, and I suppose every time you do a video, you do another bit of learning. You're learning yourself through the process of teaching others, and you learn more and more. Yeah, one thing Phil and I are on, we're always on a learning journey. Well, hence the reasons for these podcasts is to help us continue learning as well. So, what about for you, Hans? What are you currently learning on top of what you're doing, or excited to dive into next?
I actually learn a lot on the job, to be honest. So I'm not actively, I mean, the type of courses, the things that I'm learning at the moment are not really in the field of PLC program. They're more in the field of how to coach people, how to build better courses. So I'm looking into group coaching, for example. So far, my online courses, they're just that, they're online training courses. There is not so much interaction between me and the students. There's just the emails and the comments and things like that. But I'm really thinking of being more close to students and doing something like a group coaching where I teach live to people. So that's something I'm diving into. I can see it's not really related to automation, but it's something for personal development for me. But when it comes to PLC and automation, I actually learn a lot on the job because I work with companies that are always pushing the edge of technology, kind of like. I think we were the first company when I was working 10 years ago with a company that was making chocolate molding lines. First company that was using motion on a Motion platform, one of the early adopters. And there's always new things that come on production lines. Now it's getting more and more into the industry 4.0 direction. So there's a lot of things to learn that. And that's of course good. I get paid to learn basically because I have to do projects. They pay me. Can you make this project? Can you learn about how to do this? Um, 2 months ago, for example, I had to install a Rockwell 3D scanner for a customer on site. Can't remember the name, but it was the safety scanner that had to map out the area in an enclosed area to make sure there were no people in there because they were moving parts. Even there were doors. There were doors with safety guards. But they said sometimes someone might be under the machine doing something, so we want to make sure that we have as well a scanner. So that's something I had to learn on site, look for the manual, which is of course not the ideal situation. Ideally, but that's still sometimes how it happens on the floor. It's like you have to adapt, you have to find a solution, you have to learn something new. And that's how I learned most of the how to work with vision systems. I had to install some Keyence vision systems a couple months ago. Had to learn how to communicate with the PLC, what telegrams to send. So that like that, I'm evolving all the way, all the time in small bits. But I'm not like actively at the moment, not actively learning something on my own time, to say it like that.
People definitely learn in different ways, whether it's, consumption of YouTube videos or literally on the tools being practical and working through those troubleshooting tasks, as well. Um, we had one question off camera, but we'll shoot it to you again here is, so you've been in the chocolate industry for a number of years. I mean, do you have a favorite? What's the
What favorite
is
chocolate?
what's the best chocolate out there?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, so I'm Belgian, and I would say the two main countries for chocolates for very good chocolate are Belgium and Switzerland. Those are they're universally known. If you talk about chocolate, it's Belgium and Switzerland. Switzerland has maybe more well-known chocolate. They have like the Lindt brand. They have Nestle. Belgian chocolate. We just have a lot of different types, and ours is just very very good. So so it's hard to say. But yeah, for sure, Belgian chocolates are very good, and the Swiss are just they're up there as well. Um, as for a really personal brand that I like a lot, I mean, I would probably say a Lederach. It's like a very special niche product in Switzerland. It's a lot handmade. It's a bit more expensive, so I don't buy it a lot. They don't have stores here where I live, so it's only when I'm in Switzerland once in a while that I buy it. But that's very very good chocolate. Yeah.
So you have to come home with that chocolate when you come back home to the family?
I have to come home with that chocolate, and one important lesson I learned, like, don't bring it home in the middle of the summer, because I once got a huge batch. I put it in my trunk. I drove 1 hour, and when I was home, it was one big clump,
One big block.
one big
One big
melted
fondue.
fondue of melted chocolate, and it was expensive chocolate, so it was too bad. But yeah, I didn't think that went through. Yeah.
Hans, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your story. It's been a masterclass in turning challenges into career-defining strengths, with structured code, modularity, and learning along the way. So thanks for coming on the show
Thanks for
today.
having me. Thanks.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
For us as well. Thanks very much. Yeah, sharing your knowledge is so important, and we're so grateful. Not just us, I'm sure the community is grateful for the way you share your knowledge through YouTube, continually helping the industry, like you said, to understand the benefits of having structure, in across the board. And we Phil and I talk about that as a key part of any digital transformation is having good structure through the process. So learning through you, through what your mindset, your passion with others and listeners, that's fantastic. And I also grateful for the fact that your prices for your courses are very reasonable. It's excellent that you made it affordable and easy for anyone to be able to also get your courses. And I think a lot of people will be very interested to go to see your website, follow you on LinkedIn, I imagine, as well. I would encourage you to follow Hans. You can find out about the chocolates as well. I'm sure that'll be a little side hustle there. But we walk away here thinking differently about the importance of having PLCs and HMO projects structured in a different way. So thank you very much, Hans.
You're very welcome.
And to all our listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Also, check us out on Spotify and Apple and all your favorite podcast platforms. So, thanks, guys, for another great episode.